to all the participants who have joined on this meeting. Thank you very much for creating time. Today, our speaker is Dr. Jim McFie, who is well known to many people who have passed at Strathmore. From the time of Strathmore College, he was the director of the School of Accountancy. He has been teaching in the university, in the business school, and also sits on the board of a number of companies. He's going to share with us today about the future of work. And in these days in which we have been affected by the corona virus, it's changing how we work, employment, and so he's going to share with us some ideas, and he will show some videos and then give his talk a little later. Just to remind you, there's a chat box where you can send in the questions that you have so that we can have Dr. McFie respond to them at the end of his talk. Without taking much time, Jim, you can begin.
All right, thank you very much indeed, then, Eric. And ladies and gentlemen, this thing of the future of work is a thing which I've been interested in for quite a number of years. In fact, I have more than 100 files on this particular topic. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to waste your time, because I realize how important our time is. And what I find actually with the COVID-19 virus, I know my teaching has become extremely onerous, because when you as a teacher want to go in and teach, for example, taxation or accounting or anything, you have the students in front of you, you can write on the board, but now you've got to prepare everything in advance, and this is taking an incredible amount of time. I've just been on a conference call with people from, well, Jamaica, Australia, the UK, and so on, and a lot of these people are not actually involved in university teaching, but one of the things that they all agreed was the fact that although we talk about people being replaced and no work being available, the fact is that Amazon, for example, its share price has gone through the roof. It was the richest company in the world. It depends on things, but it competes with Apple. Apple was once the richest, most valuable company in the world, but Amazon has gone through the roof now. Jeff Bezos is a very, very rich man, but they've employed an additional 100,000 people. We're here on Zoom, or using Zoom. Zoom is actually quoted on the New York Stock Exchange. Its share price has gone up by 150% since the COVID-19 virus. So the fact is that, in this case here, it is possible to think of diversifying, and this is, I think, what we've got to do in Kenya. We've got to probably, I know that Githinji Gitahi, who is the head of AMREF, an incredibly clever man, I must say, and he was saying, look, things are going to change forever. What's the point of spending 2 hours sitting in a car in a traffic jam when you can actually have a meeting, by video call? So what's the point? The Central Bank of Kenya, unfortunately, our regulators in Kenya are really behind the curve. And if you have any possibility of bringing any regulator up to speed with what is happening in the world today, please spend time doing that. Because my own experience is that people in the regulators and the people in government, they just are not up to speed with things. And, many things. I had a meeting, I won't tell you the organization, but I had a meeting on Tuesday morning in a particular organization here in Kenya, and I realized that organization is just not working. It's not working. And, you know, and when you point this out to them, they won't actually accept it. So, you know, we have to keep in mind that we as Kenya are competing against Vietnam. We're competing against India. We're competing against China. I have, you know, a number of past students who are running businesses, manufacturing. And in this particular case, what happens is that, you know, they have actually had to close down their businesses and or just simply become importers from China. So, you know, we have to keep in mind, we need to be able to compete with China, with India, with, you know, Vietnam, as I say. The other day I bought some toothpaste. It was the cheapest in the shop. Where did it come from? It was a Unilever product. They used to produce toothpaste in Kenya, and probably they still do, but this particular one came from Vietnam. I have a pair of shoes that was given to me. They were made in Vietnam. So we have to understand that we are competing with the world. Now, what I want to do is first of all, I don't actually work for Safaricom. I remember once I was in a conference and someone said, actually, well, I do work for, even though I'm not on the payroll of Safaricom, I work for Safaricom. Because as you know, if you actually take the profit that Safaricom makes, it makes a profit which is greater than the turnover of East African breweries. If you remove the tax, the turnover of East African breweries, the amount of beer and spirits they sell in Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya is lower than the profit of Safaricom. That's how big Safaricom is. And you and I are working for Safaricom. Why? Because, well, you know, you and I probably are subscribed to, you know, to Safaricom. And the result is that when we speak, even now, probably our signal is getting from one person to another on Safaricom. But I just want to show you what can actually occur today. And I remember I was in a meeting recently where I remember in 1993, I was sitting at a hotel in London. I was representing the ACCA in Kenya at that particular meeting. And I saw a man from Hong Kong pick up a mobile phone, and I was absolutely astounded by the fact that he actually was answering a telephone call in that hotel dining room from Hong Kong. We hadn't got into mobiles in a big way. Of course, today we wouldn't think twice about that. But, you know, I think it's so important to remember the advance of technology. And you and I have to become masters of technology. So in this case here, I think it's very, very important, you know, just to, I want to stress this, and you'll see it in a moment. But I wanted just to show you a very short little video. It's only 1 minute and 38 seconds long. Now, I want to go into, therefore, you know, a video here, which it'll come up in a second, okay? But the reason why I showed you that previous video is because of the fact that, well, it really, as I say, shows you what we can do today, which, you know, when you think about it, it would not have been possible a number of years ago. Okay, so I just want now to go to the next video that I want to show you. All right, and let's just see what it is. I think it's important that you're able to look at this later, think about it. We must keep in mind, however, that this concept of the basic wage is something which has got a lot of traction all over the world today. But I think if you think about our position in Kenya, it's going to be a very, very much more difficult thing. And I was on a show recently with an economist, and this particular economist, I think, was out of touch with what's going on in Kenya. She was talking about the safety net, and other countries in the world they're able to provide a safety net because of the fact that their GDP is very, very much higher than ours. And the fact is that the government has got very much more income from income tax. If, for example, I'll actually show it to you a little bit later, but the fact is that we have 2.5 million people working in formal jobs in Kenya, in a population, let's say, of 50 million people, so 5% of the population. If you go to Germany, that number is 50% of the population. So, obviously Germany is going to be a richer country than Kenya, simply because you have those people working and so on. Now, the car companies are doing very, very badly at the moment. People are not buying Volkswagens, BMWs, Mercedes. Here in Kenya they are, but in other countries they're not. And, so COVID-19 is going to change many, many things. Is it going to be a permanent change? Well, certainly in the idea of Githinji Gitahi, who's the head of AMREF, I mentioned him a little bit earlier, certainly he actually does believe that that is going to be the case. I want to go on to the next video, what I want to show you. This is by The Economist. It's a little bit more recent than that one. But again, it's really about, your job, okay? And we'll see it's quite an interesting video, this. Digital revolution is even impacting Kibera, or Kibra as we tend to call it today. But I think it's very, very important that, we in our own jobs are just thinking about how exactly can I use, everything very much more efficiently. I want to go on to the next video. It's just that time is passing very, very quickly. And in one of the previous, I think in both of the previous videos, we actually saw an organization called WeWork. And here we have an interview with the managing director of WeWork. It is an Indian company. But I think, again, what I'm saying always is what we really need to do is we need to be able to compete with India. All right, ladies and gentlemen, just a small point there. I was talking to someone yesterday. He's a person who's actually got 2 shops. His business is really going badly. His business is at a standstill right at the minute. So, I'm actually going to, on his behalf, speak to his landlord. I know the landlord, so I'm going to try to help him in that particular way. But I think what we can do is to learn from that particular video that, if any of you are in that situation, I would suggest get in touch with your landlord so that that particular person is able to continue business. I have a number of friends who are really worried about the economy, and people tend to say, well, the economy is going to get very much better than what it is, previously. I'm always a little bit hesitant about that. I think there may be a permanent change. But again, this is a bit of, an American view. But what I would like to do is I'd like us just to see one more video here. And then I've got a very short video on tourism. Okay, so let's in fact get started on what I wanted to tell you. Basically, we've had a look at those videos, and I hope everyone, all right, that's me, and I don't think we need to worry about that. What is more important really is what I was talking about a little bit earlier. This is the Kenya situation a couple of years ago, because it's very difficult to get the very latest information. But you can see here that, well, as I mentioned to you, if we take self-employed people, these are people who actually file income tax returns, you know, they're informal work, as it were. The number is 2.687 million out of a population of 47 million. Whereas when you take the number in Germany, all right, you've got over 40 million people, okay, and informally self-employed. This is, although these are people who are doing businesses, those businesses are relatively, they're in the gig economy, but they are very much more profitable than what happens here in Kenya. As you know, we had a statistic which was given to us a little bit earlier this year that 864,000 jobs were created in Kenya. But when we look at the formal side of the economy, we're talking about 60,000. So the fact is that, you know, it's a very, very much bigger number in the informal sector than actually in the formal sector. One of the things that we look at here in Kenya is the value added by the manufacturing sector as a percentage of GDP. And one of the figures that, you know, is sometimes the Kenya numbers are not available, but you can see here that in 2006, 14.32% of GDP in Kenya was generated by manufacturing. Since then, it has gone down. Why? Well, the answer is that China has basically eaten away at our production capacity. You can see that, you know, Tanzania in the year 2000, it was a high there. And for Uganda, 7.82% was the number there. If we come to more recent numbers, what happens there is that we've got, I'm just trying to get people from the waiting room out to join the. So here in Kenya, as I say, at the moment, you know, this number now is basically 7% of GDP. It's increasing a little bit, but it's very difficult. Why? Because we are an importing country. And I remember once meeting Chris Kirubi. He was rushing down to Mombasa. There were 2 containers full of big biros made in China, stamped made in Kenya. Some Kenyan was importing those from China, and obviously to make those big biros in China is very much lower price than what you could do in Kenya. You can see here Tanzania actually got to a high at this point. Uganda went up and is now going down because India and China and also Vietnam, they're really, really going places. You can see here that Vietnam is a country which I always make a comparison between Kenya and Vietnam simply because of the fact that you can see that Vietnam, it's going in the right direction. But it's a very, very competitive country. When our exports of tea to Pakistan a few years ago was when they were going down, Vietnam increased its share of market in Pakistan by 60%. It's a country we have to look at in order to compete with them successfully. All right, so we then have, in this case here, the distribution of wage employment across income groups. And you can see that there are very few people in Kenya who actually earn more than 100,000 shillings a month. Many of you who are actually listening to this are probably in that group, but I think you've got to realize that you are in that small percentage of people who are actually earning more than 100,000 shillings a month. All right. When there was a survey carried out by the NCPB, sorry, not the NCPB, the National Bureau of Statistics, okay, and they found that, you know, again, these numbers don't actually agree with the economic survey, which is carried out by the same group of people. But, you know, here, the number of micro and small and medium-sized enterprises, they counted a total number of 7.41 million, with the total number of people engaged there is to be 14.9 million. It doesn't agree with that earlier number that we had, even though it actually relates to the same period of time. The unlicensed enterprises, how they get 57.8%, when in fact of the 7.41 million, if 1.56 million are in fact licensed, that's about 20%. It's less than 20% in fact. So here, the vast majority of MSMEs are not licensed. You know, the paid employee in the licensed group, okay, up here is 4 million. So in that case there, micro-sized enterprises accounting for 81.1% of persons in the MSMEs. Very often the MSMEs are a single mama mboga, you know, running her business on her own, or a single man running his business on his own. If you actually take the value of the MSMEs output in terms of Kenya's domestic GDP at that particular time, it was 33.8%. Now, you've got to keep in mind that, you know, amongst these MSMEs will be agriculture. Agriculture is our biggest single contributor to GDP in Kenya. And that means that the people certainly in the countryside in Kenya are not actually, they're never going to starve to death. We have a dual problem at the moment. We've got floods in Western Kenya and in other parts as well. And then, of course, we've got the locust scare. So what exactly the position is going to be in relation to our GDP growth this year, I tend to feel that the Central Bank of Kenya is being very optimistic. In other countries, I know in the United States, GDP growth is negative. In other words, they're in a state of recession. But, you know, when you think about doing business in Kenya, Sub-Saharan Africa generally is ranked as the region in the world where it is most difficult to do business. And for me, that's a worry. You know, we have to keep in mind that, you know, the Capital Markets Authority here in Kenya, you know, what do we find in the Capital Markets Authority? We have fewer companies almost each year. How many initial public offerings have we really had in, let's say, the last 15 years? The answer is almost zero. So, you know, private equity is very much more successful, I think, in Kenya than going to the stock exchange. But at the same time, even private equity would want to exit from an investment. Is it simply going to then sell to another private equity company? Obviously, you know, what they do in many countries, okay, is they exit by actually going into, by being quoted on a stock exchange. So one of the things that we have to try to sensitize our regulators and also government especially, and this is especially the case in KRA, you regulators, you people, you know, NEMA, KRA, you know, all the people who actually have some sort of licensing function, the counties, KEBS, for example, all of these people have to realize they must loosen their grip. I was talking to someone yesterday evening. They're actually just starting a business in the export processing zone down in Athi River. And this person was saying that, I was saying, well, you know, you get your tax advantage for the first 10 years. And then after that, for the next 10 years, you pay tax at 25% instead of 30%. But if you operate in Mauritius, you pay tax at 15% per annum for the whole of your life. So obviously, instead of setting up your business, you know, your business can actually be run as easily in Mauritius as in Kenya. So we have to be aware. We have to make the government aware. We have to make KRA aware of the fact that they are actually driving business out of Kenya. And we can see here that 3 out of 5 businesses fail within the first few months of operation. That's the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. It's a number which has not changed since that particular 2007 quote. So what are the causes of failure? Well, limited market access. We must remember, you know, I was once, someone suggested to us in Sasini, look, why don't you open one of your coffee shops in Nyeri? And I said, look, I visit at that particular time. I used to visit Nyeri once a month. I used to go to see a friend of mine there. And we could get lunch, 3 of us, for about 600 shillings in a quite a nice cafe. Now, if we're going to go and open up a coffee shop, and your coffee shop is going to cost 150, your cup of coffee is going to cost 150 shillings, how many clients are you going to have in Nyeri? So, you know, we have to start thinking about, you know, really thinking. So I find so many Kenyans, they just repeat what they've read or what they've heard from some other Tom, Dick, or a Wiener, and they don't think, they don't ask really deep questions. So, you know, limited market access, limited access to information, finance, technology, unfavorable policy environment, unfavorable regulatory environment. PricewaterhouseCoopers earlier this year said, look, one of the main things that actually stops business in Kenya is excessive regulation. That's PricewaterhouseCoopers, that's not me. Closure of businesses. You know, but in the 5 years from 2012 to 2016, 2.2 million MSMEs closed. Now, it could be, one of them would be that Joseph gentleman who now is, you know, he's actually into a different business. But, you know, the most which closed are wholesale and retail trade and repair of motor vehicles and motorcycles. And, you know, when an MSME closes, its average life was 3.8 years. So, you know, in this particular case, what happens is, you know, the most vulnerable started or acquired within the last 2 years. So we have to keep in mind that we got to make business a little bit easier to carry out. Up near Lavington, there are a group of people who actually are engaged in car washing. Now, I read in the newspaper that, well, Nairobi County was very proud when it said, well, you know, we've closed down this car washing operation. In fact, there was a pitched battle between the Nairobi County officials and the people there. And the people there, fortunately, to my mind, they're still doing car washing. Because if they can't wash cars, where are they going to get their money? They have to go into stealing, into crime. So, you know, I think it's so important here that we try to understand that, you know, we've got to make it easier rather than more difficult to run business successfully. It's interesting, you know, that very near this informal car washing operation, a person has turned a vacant plot into a formal car washing operation. And, you know, well, it's going to be very interesting to me, because I will see now, can that formal operator of car washing be more successful than those informal people? It's interesting to watch that, because, you know, I had a past student once, and I met his father at the Intercontinental Hotel, and I asked him, I forget the name of this young man, said, well, you know, how's so-and-so doing, your son? Is he really doing well? He said, well, actually, he's not in accounting any longer. And I said, well, what's he doing? He said, well, now he organizes the distribution of newspapers. I don't know whether he's still doing that, because newspapers, well, their readership is really going down year by year. And it's a business you want to get out of if you're in. But this person, what he did was, he in fact used to roll up the newspaper, put it into a plastic sleeve, and then have his men just simply throw the newspaper over the gate onto the front step. It was in plastic, so even if it was raining, it wasn't a problem. And there you have a formal business, taking business away from informal people selling newspapers in the street. So I always think about that when I drive past this formal car washing entity. Is it going to be successful? It may be. We'd have to wait and see. One of the things that I always feel that, you know, today, there aren't 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. There's another one, which all youngsters should be taught. Youngsters today, unfortunately, we have a problem with parenting in today's world. So youngsters today are given, you know, I find that they are totally irresponsible in their learning process, but they do need to learn about accounting, the language of business. And, you know, all students at school should be taught accounting, to my mind, simply because very often in Kenya, you're going to be forced to be a micro or a small or medium-sized enterprise. And, you know, if you are thinking about your children, you've got to encourage them to get good grades. You've got to encourage them to have technical competence. You've got to encourage them to know about accounting, but even to know about marketing. Just to realize, you know, how many youngsters today will go into a shop and even be aware, look, you know, the way that person deals with you is going to affect that person's business. I always find that today, people involved in human resource management, they really need to deepen their knowledge. Something that, you know, I find that HR management all over the world is a problem, to my mind. We've got to really improve in that very, very much better. And then, of course, information technology. You have got to develop your skill in information technology. There's a past student of mine who works in Farmer's Choice. She's an accountant there. She's got a BCom, first class honors. She's got a CPA. She, in fact, has done an MBA. She's doing a degree in IT. Why? Because of the fact that she realizes, look, I need to be better than the best in IT. So in the situation here, I think it's so important just to keep in mind that, you know, we've got to be people who are able, you've got to be people who are able to do basically anything. Many graduates, you know, entering the, this is from the Journal of Accountancy, a US magazine. Many graduates entering the profession will be expected to have the standard level of accounting knowledge, as well as the ability to manage new artificial intelligence technologies and conduct advanced analytics. Okay, says Carol, CPA, who teaches accounting at the Asheville Buncombe Technical Community College in North Carolina. So, you know, at the same time, recently I was giving a lecture on, you know, the whole thing of data analytics. And people say, well, you know, with data analytics, you're going to be able to tell the future and so on and so forth. You've got to remember that accountants do have a lot of data. they have a lot of data. And it's a question here of using that data. Now, what happens today is that that data is going to become, you know, instead of just simply saying, well, okay, this person owes me 100,000 shillings, you're going to be able to know, look, you know, is this a typical customer, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it's important to keep in mind that, you know, well, we can actually track many more things using computers that we would not be able to track just simply using a pen and a piece of paper. It's rather like that particular organization, Humanize. Okay, well, you know, in that case there, you know, Humanize could actually track me to see if I'm sitting in front of my computer talking, and they could even go further. They could see, well, what am I talking about? But I think it's so important here to keep in mind that, you know, it's not a big step for us to go into data analytics. We have to, but at the same time, we have to be aware of the fact, we've got to be aware of the fact that we have to learn that. And so here, again, this is a little bit dated, it's 3 years old now, but a survey by Forbes, Insight, and KPMG, 26 of financial executives says advanced technologies would become essential to financial reporting and auditing in the next 2 years. But the same is the case in medicine, the same is the case in architecture, the same is the case in engineering. So here, a further 53% viewed advanced technology skills as becoming a must-have in 3 to 5 years. Well, that's now. So, you know, in this particular case, I think it's so important that you realize you need to develop those particular skills. And so here, what happens is, you know, in this case, I've listed down a number of skills. Verbal communication. And, you know, if you find that you can't communicate well, and I find, well, even I was in a conference, you know, a little bit earlier this morning, and this is the case all over the world. People say things which someone else has just said previously, and there's a repetition of those ideas in different words. Well, you know, but here, you have to be able to express your ideas clearly and confidently in speech, but also ideas, not just, you know, mantras, not things which I find that so often I listen to people and I think, well, you know, what really have I learned by spending 5 minutes listening to that particular person? We've got to know how to work in teams. We've got to know how to have commercial awareness. So many of our youngsters today have no commercial awareness. Is your son or your daughter, do you lead them to become more aware of, you know, what it is to run a business? Because that's what they're going to have to do. We also have to have analyzing and investigating. And, you know, in this, gather information systematically to establish facts and principles. The police, they've got a roadblock. How many people have they stopped committing a crime as a result of this roadblock? 0. What are you doing? You're slowing down business in Kenya. Does this concern you? No. But we're competing against Vietnam. We're competing against China. We're competing against India. Does he care? No. But does Uhuru care? No. Does Ruto care? Probably not. Does Raila care? So we have to keep in mind, if we want to have a population working in the future, we have to become more competitive. Initiative, self-motivation. You know, so often I'm trying to do something in my office. There's a student in my office and the student will just watch me because that's what we do in Kenya. Go and help the person? No, it doesn't matter whether that thing takes 10 minutes or 20 minutes. I'll wait. I won't go and help the person. So are we able to act on initiative, identify opportunities, be proactive in putting forward ideas and solutions? So many people say the government should do this. You know, we have sometimes conferences where we have our breakout groups, and a group comes back and says, the government should do A, the government should do B, and the government should do C. Those people should not be in that conference. They should go back to looking after their cows and their goats. We got to have drive. We got to have determination to get things done. The government in Kenya is not working. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. He says, well, they don't want to work because, you know, law is where you have order, and order is where you have law. And the problem is, I don't want to be accountable. So therefore, create chaos. And then, of course, written communication. I was working with a PhD the other day. This person can't communicate. They're not able to express themselves clearly in writing. So a PhD is just, you know, becoming another pisshead dunce. Planning and organizing. Are we able to plan? You know, some people, my goodness, you know, I'm astounded at their incredible ability. But, you know, as I say, I was in a meeting in an organization 2 days ago, or 3 days ago now. It's just not working. And if they didn't actually exist by law, it wouldn't, if it was a private organization, it wouldn't be in existence. We've got to have flexibility. Okay, don't forget here, don't say, well, I'm an accountant, I'm a lawyer, I'm a this, I'm a that. You got to be a jack of all trades or a Jill of all trades. And finally, time management. We got to understand, you know, time is so important. And, you know, that means, am I really going to add something by speaking? If not, don't speak. That really is, you know, my presentation, ladies and gentlemen.